Welcome to this demo about BRF Plus. We're going to create a rule that will help us determine the strategy for a PO approval. We start by creating our data elements, the variables of the rule. So I'm going to start by creating the purchase group, which is linked to the DDIC object, a kappa group. So purchase group. Then I create the net value, so net WR. And then I create two variables which aren't linked to DDIC, so type and strategy. Then I'm going to create a rule because I want to, based on the purchase group, I want to determine if I'm buying materials or services. So now I'm going to name my rule is a material or a service. Then what I'm going to say is that for certain purchase groups, they correspond to materials, other purchase groups correspond to services purchasing. I'm doing this because later on the decision tables will depend if we're buying materials or services. Okay, so I choose a variable. If purchase organization is between 001 and 006, it's a material. So M. If it is not, then it is a service. So I say type is equal to S. Okay, so now I have this very simple rule. It's an if. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the decision tables. So you are used to having decision tables in purchase order approval. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one table for materials and one table for services. I'm doing this because in this example the purchasing of materials will depend only on the value of the purchase order, while the determination of the services will depend on the purchase group. So here I'm going to create my first table for materials. I'm going to enter edit mode and I'm going to say which fields are the input. So I'm going to say on this first one that the purchase group is the input and the strategy, approval strategy, is the output. I could have multiple columns for inputs, so no problem. Now I'm going to say, I'm going to write the values. I'm going to add one line and two lines. You can import and export from Excel, so that's very handy. Save. No, I have to still have to set the strategies. So below 10,000 A, above 10,000 B. So now for the services table, like I said, as input it will have the purchasing group, and as output the strategy again. So I'm going to add the lines. And for purchase group 008, it's B, and yada yada. So, okay. So now I'm going to use this. I'm going to use these two tables in a new rule. This new rule will, what it will do is, it will check if the material type is M or S, which was determined by the previous rule, and then determine the strategy depending on this on the table, on the selected table. So if type is M, so I'm going to search in the decision table for materials, and I'm going to set, to change M. Then I'm going to set the value of strategy because it's the output of the table. And then I'm going to do the same, because if it's not M, then you're going to search the services table. I'm going to set again the strategy. Okay. So now I have two rules, but they are separated. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain these two rules in a rule set. So I'm going to create a rule set, name it, and then what I'm going to do is first I have to define that I have a variable that's neither input or output, that it's the type. It's shared between the two rules. Okay? So then I'm going to add the rules that I created. First, I'm going to determine if it is a material or a service. So I'm just going to put here a description so that later I can read this better. To say determine if it is a material or a service. Okay, so that's going to set my my variable, and then I'm going to add a second rule. The second rule will determine, based on the type, what is the strategy. So I'm going to say down because this runs after the determination of the type. And again, I'm going to set the text so that people can read this rule later. Okay, so now I'm going to save it. I'm going to activate it. And finally, I'm going to need something that calls this rule set. So I'm going to create a function, which is basically the interface to my rule. These functions have import parameters and output parameters. So I'm going to say that as an input parameter, so I'm going to edit mode, and I'm going to say that as an input parameter, I can choose the purchase group and the net value. So purchase group and the net value. As an output, I have the strategy. So I'm going to pick, okay, select, and I'm going to choose strategy because this is the output. Okay, then you activate, and now what's left is to attribute this function to the rule set. So I'm going to open the rule set, and I'm going to set the function. Okay, so now I'm done. So now I'm going to run the function in simulation just to show you how this works. So enter simulation. So I'm going to simulate. I'm going to pick my values. You could use this to import mass values from Excel, so you can do a lot of testing, mass testing. I'm going to simulate. So I get A as an answer. Based on my input, I have the output. If I change for 007 or 008, I have the new table for services, and I can check again my value.